The expo in Nashville was supposed to keep me gone until Sunday. I had a booth booked, 3 meetings lined up, and a motel room that smelled like bleach and old smoke. By 6 that evening, none of it mattered. A transformer blew somewhere near the convention center. Half the building went dark, and within an hour the organizers called the whole thing off. Men started packing crates in the dark, cursing under emergency lights, and I stood there with my truck keys in my hand, thinking about the one thing I hadn't expected to get back early to. Home. It was a little after 9 when I pulled into our driveway outside Murfreesboro. The porch light was off. Lila's car wasn't there. That stopped me for a second. My wife was the kind of woman who always knew how a house should look from the street. Warm lamp in the entry, kitchen pendant on, something soft in the windows. Even when we were barely talking these last couple years, the house still looked arranged, intentional, like one of the glossy rooms she built for clients in her design studio. That night it looked empty. I carried my duffel inside and set it by the stairs. The air felt still, too still, with that expensive candle smell Lila liked hanging in the foyer. No TV, no music, no note on the counter. I checked the time and told myself not to make anything out of it. She had late nights sometimes, client dinners, charity boards, studio events that ran longer than she claimed they would. I poured a bourbon and sat in the den without turning on the main lights. The only glow came from the lamp beside my chair and the digital clock on the cable box. 10:15, 10:58, 11:36. The house made its usual sounds around me. Ice settling in the freezer, the old oak floor giving a dry pop in the hallway, the low hum from the fridge. I listened to all of it because it gave me something to do besides think. Around midnight, headlights washed across the front windows. I didn't move. The front door opened softly, like she thought the house was asleep. Then Lila stepped in, and the first thing I noticed was that she wasn't dressed like a woman coming home from work. She had on heels too sharp for the office, a fitted cream coat left open over a dark dress I'd never seen before, and her lipstick was still fresh except for the slight blur at one corner. Her hair, usually pinned neat when she was with clients, had loosened around her face. She saw me in the den and stopped. For a second, neither of us said anything. She looked startled, but it passed fast. What came after wasn't guilt. It was irritation. "Derek?" she said, dropping her keys into the bowl by the door. "Why are you here?" Like I was the one who had shown up where I didn't belong. I set my glass down slow and stood up. Expo got canceled. She glanced toward the kitchen, then back at me, already tense, already defensive, and I felt something cold move through my chest. It wasn't anger yet, just the sense that I had walked back into my own house too early and interrupted something I was never supposed to see. She closed the door behind her with more force than she needed, then slipped off her heels like she was annoyed at the floor for being there. I watched every movement. The coat came off first. Then her purse landed on the entry table. She didn't ask how the expo had gone. Didn't ask why I was home early. She just looked at the bourbon in my hand and at the clock behind me, and I could almost see her rearranging the night in her head. "Why didn't you call?" she asked. "I did." My voice stayed even. "Twice." She pulled out her phone, glanced at the screen, and shrugged. It was loud. That answer sat between us for a second. Thin. Useless. "Where were you, Lila?" Her expression changed in a way I had seen before when vendors missed deadlines or clients pushed back on her prices. Not panic. Offense. At Brooke's event. I said nothing. She folded her arms. "The charity auction. I told you about it. It ran late, and Brooke needed help breaking things down after. She was short on staff. Brooke needed help until after midnight. She's a friend." Her tone sharpened. Some people show up for their friends. That landed where she wanted it to. A small cut, clean and practiced. I ignored it. "You weren't dressed like this when I left." Her jaw tightened. "I changed at the studio because we had donors there." I took a slow breath. "Then why is your car mileage up 40 miles from downtown?" That made her blink. Just once. Small but enough. I knew that number because I noticed the odometer when I parked beside her 2 days earlier. Habit. I track machines. Mileage where noise. I notice what changes. I had to drive Brooke home, she said quickly. Brooke lives 12 minutes away. Now the irritation turned colder. What is this? I stepped out of the den and into the foyer, close enough to smell her perfume under the night air. It was stronger than usual, layered over something else I couldn't place. It's a question. No, she said. It's an interrogation because you walked in unexpectedly and decided to act like I owe you a report. I let that sit. She looked tired, but not from work. Her makeup was too careful. Her earrings were still in. There was a faint flush in her cheeks that didn't match the cool March air outside. Call Brooke, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Call her. Put her on speaker. Tell her I just want to confirm you were helping her clean up. For the first time that night, a crack showed. Not guilt. Not yet. Just a flash of naked anger. That is insane. Is it false? She snatched up her purse. I am not doing this with you at 12:30 in the morning like some trashy couple on a reality show. Then she tried to walk past me toward the stairs. I moved once, just enough to stop the path without touching her. Lila. She looked up at me, and whatever was left of the easy lie was gone now. Her face had gone flat, her voice lower, harder. You don't get to corner me in my own house, she said. Our house, I almost corrected. But standing there in the quiet, with her dress for someone else's attention and angry that I had noticed, the words didn't come. Because for the first time, it no longer felt like mine. Morning came slow and gray, the kind that presses against the windows and makes everything feel heavier than it should. I hadn't slept. I stayed in the den, sitting in the same chair, watching the sky shift from black to that dull Tennessee blue that never quite feels like morning. Upstairs, I heard her moving around like nothing had happened. Water running, closet doors opening, the soft, measured rhythm of someone who wasn't worried about the night before catching up to her. I made coffee and waited. She came down around 8, dressed for work. Clean lines, neutral tones, hair pinned back again like the woman who owned a successful design studio and knew exactly how to present herself. If someone saw her right then, they'd think everything was intact. She didn't look at me at first, just walked into the kitchen, reached for a mug, and poured herself coffee like we were running a normal morning. We're not done, I said. She took a sip before answering. I have a meeting at 9. Cancel it. That made her pause. Just a fraction. Then she set the mug down with more force than needed. I'm not rearranging my schedule, because you decided to have a meltdown last night. I stood there, steady. Then I'll keep asking until you're late anyway. Silence stretched across the kitchen. Thick, quiet. She turned slowly, and this time there was no irritation, no defensiveness. Just something colder, like she had already made a decision, and I was behind on understanding it. What exactly do you think is going on, Derek? I think you weren't with Brooke. A beat, and I think you know that. Her eyes held mine for a long second. Then she exhaled, almost bored. Fine. That word landed heavier than anything she'd said so far. There's someone else, she said. No hesitation. No build-up. Just the truth, dropped flat between us like it didn't weigh anything. I didn't move. His name is Mason. He's a photographer I hired last year for the brand shoots. She picked her mug back up, like we were discussing a vendor change. He's 31. 31. The number sat there, sharp and specific. How long? I asked. A while. How long, Lila? She met my eyes again. Months. The room didn't spin. There was no rush of heat, no shouting, no sudden loss of control. Just a quiet, narrowing focus, like everything unnecessary had been stripped away. Does he know you're married? I asked. She gave a small, almost amused look. Of course he does. And that doesn't bother him. No. I nodded once. And you? I said, does it bother you? That was when something shifted, not in her voice, but in the way she stood. Straighter, certain. No, she said, it doesn't. There was no apology in it, no regret, not even the effort to pretend. You stopped seeing me years ago. Derek, she continued, calm, measured. You were always at the shop, always buried in work. You came home, ate, sat in that chair, and went to sleep. That's not a marriage. That's maintenance. I didn't interrupt. Mason sees me, she said. He listens. He notices things. I don't have to compete with your business to exist in the same room. Her words were precise. Practiced, not something she came up with overnight. You could have said something, I replied. I did, she said. You just didn't hear it. Another silence, this one different. Final in a way the night before hadn't been. I looked at her, really looked this time, at the woman I'd built a life with, the house she'd shaped, the routines we'd settled into like they were permanent. And I understood something simple. She wasn't confessing because she felt guilty. She was telling me because she was done hiding it. I stood there a few seconds longer after she finished, just long enough to make sure there wasn't anything else coming. There wasn't. No, I'm sorry. No hesitation. No attempt to soften what she just said. Just her, standing in the kitchen with her coffee, already mentally moving on to her 9 o'clock meeting. That was the moment it ended. Not when she said his name. Not when she admitted it had been months. It ended right there, in the space where something should have been. Regret, maybe. And there was nothing. I nodded once, more to myself than to her. All right, I said. She frowned slightly. That's it. What were you expecting? I don't know, she said, irritation creeping back in. Something. A reaction. I picked up my mug and rinsed it out in the sink. Slow, deliberate. The water ran steady over the glass. You already made your decision. That doesn't mean... It does. I cut in, not raising my voice. You didn't slip. You didn't make a mistake. You built something else while still living here. Her jaw tightened. I didn't plan it like that. I turned the water off and dried my hands. You kept it like that. That shut her up. For a moment, we just stood there again, the same kitchen, the same morning light, but everything in it had shifted. The counters, the cabinets, the framed photos on the wall. None of it felt anchored anymore, just objects in a space we happened to share. I'm not leaving the house, she said suddenly, like she needed to claim something. If that's where this is going. I looked at her, calm, level. I'm not asking you to. That caught her off guard. I'm moving downstairs. I added, the den. You're being dramatic. No, I said, I'm being clear. I walked past her and down the hall, not waiting for a response. The den still smelled faintly like last night's bourbon and the leather of the chair I'd been sitting in. I opened the small closet and pulled out a blanket, then went upstairs to the bedroom. She was standing by the dresser when I walked in. What are you doing? She asked. I didn't answer. I grabbed a few shirts, jeans, underwear. Nothing more than what I needed for a few days. I moved through the room like I was packing for another trip. Efficient, quiet, no wasted motion. This is ridiculous, she said. We can talk about this like adults. I zipped the bag. We just did. That wasn't a conversation. It was enough. She stepped closer. You don't get to just shut down and act like everything is decided. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time there was nothing pulling me toward fixing it. No instinct to argue, no need to be understood. It is, I said. Something in my voice must have landed, because she stopped pushing. I walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and into the den without looking back. When I set the bag down, the house felt different. Quieter, but not in the same way as the night before. This wasn't waiting. This was separation. I sat on the edge of the couch and let the silence settle in properly. No anger, no panic, just a clear, steady understanding that whatever we had been holding together out of habit or convenience had already been gone. All I'd done was finally step out of it. Upstairs, I heard her heels move across the floor, then the front door open and close. She left for her meeting. I stayed where I was. And in that stillness, I made the only decision that mattered. The marriage wasn't broken. It was finished. I didn't go to work that day. I called the shop, told my foreman to handle anything urgent, and said I'd be out for a couple days. He didn't ask questions. He'd known me long enough to hear when something wasn't right and leave it alone. By 10, I was on the road to Knoxville. The drive gave me time to think, but not in the way people expect. I wasn't replaying her words or picturing them together. That part had already settled into something cold and distant. What mattered now was structure. What existed on paper. What could be taken and what couldn't. I'd spent 30 years building my company. Custom motorcycle parts. Precision work. Small runs that bigger manufacturers didn't bother with. Every machine in that shop. Every supplier contact. Every contract. I knew where it came from and what it was worth. I wasn't going to lose it because I hesitated. My attorney, Ron Keller, had an office just off Gay Street. We'd known each other since our 20s, back when neither of us had anything worth protecting. Now, he handled contracts for half the businesses in the county, and he understood one thing better than most: timing. He didn't look surprised when I walked in. "Derek," he said, standing up from behind his desk. "You look like you didn't sleep." I didn't. He nodded toward the chair across from him. "All right, start talking." I gave him the short version. No extra details. No emotion. Just facts. Affair. Months. No intention from her to stop. He listened without interrupting. Fingers steepled under his chin. When I finished, he leaned back. "You thinking divorce?" "It's already decided." "Good," he said, like I confirmed something he expected. "Then we don't waste time." He turned to his computer and pulled up a file. "You remember that post-nuptial agreement you signed about 8 years ago?" I remember signing something after we expanded the shop. "That's the one," he said. "You separated business assets from marital ones. At the time, it was mostly precautionary. Now it matters. How solid is it? If everything's been kept clean, very." That word stayed with me. Clean. I thought about my records, inventory logs, purchase orders, tax filings. I'd always kept things tight, not for this, but because that's how I run machines and money. No slack, no guesswork. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything," Ron said. "Ownership records, tax returns, inventory reports, account access. I want a full picture before she knows you're moving. She already knows it's over. That's not the same as knowing you're preparing." He looked at me directly. "Right now, you have an advantage. She thinks this is emotional, personal. If we keep it quiet, it stays that way long enough for us to lock things down." I nodded. "Also," he added, "don't move money suddenly. Don't change routines in a way that looks reactive. Quiet, Derek. Everything quiet." I stood up, understood. As I reached the door, he spoke again. "And Derek, document everything from here on out. Conversations, changes, anything that feels off." I paused, hand on the handle. "Feels off," I repeated. "You'd be surprised how often there's more going on than just the affair." I left without answering. The drive back felt shorter. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Clean, composed, controlled. Lila's car was already there. Inside, nothing had moved. No sign of disruption. No trace of the conversation we'd had. I went straight to the den, opened my laptop, and started pulling files. Tax returns first, then inventory sheets, vendor contracts, bank statements, line by line. Quiet, clean, but somewhere in the back of my mind, Ron's words stayed with me. There's more going on than just the affair. I didn't know what it was yet, but I intended to find out. Claire contacted me 3 days later. Not by phone, not by email I'd recognize. It came through the general inquiry form on my company website, the one meant for bulk orders and custom requests. Most of it is junk, tire kickers, people asking for parts they can't afford. This one had a single line. "Mr. Holloway, I work for Lila. You need to know what's actually happening. Please reply." No name, no details. I read it twice, then checked the timestamp. Sent at 2:14 a.m. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I saved it, forwarded it to a private account, and went back to what I'd been doing, cross-checking inventory logs against last quarter's reports. Numbers first. Always numbers. Still clean, but the message sat there in the back of my mind. By noon, I replied with a new email address and a simple line. "Send what you have." She answered within 10 minutes. Her name was Claire Bennett, junior staff at Lila's design studio. 2 years in, handle logistics, vendor coordination, and storage records. The kind of position that sees everything but isn't supposed to speak. I can't talk on the phone, she wrote. Not yet. I don't want this traced back to me. Then right, I replied. There was a pause. Then the messages started coming in, longer each time. At first, it sounded like what I already knew. Mason, photo shoots, late nights, the way Lila's schedule had shifted over the past year. I read through it without reacting, just confirming patterns. Then it changed. It's not just the affair, Claire wrote. He's been pushing her to move inventory. My fingers stopped on the keyboard. What kind of inventory? I typed high-value pieces, antiques, custom furniture from clients, things that are supposed to be in storage or on hold. A slow, steady pressure built behind my ribs. Where? I asked. Warehouse space outside the city, not under the company name. I leaned back in my chair, eyes fixed on the screen. Why? There was a longer delay this time. When her answer came, it was precise. He says it makes her business look weaker on paper, less stable, lower asset value. I read that twice, then a third time, and Lila agreed to this. I wrote, yes. No hesitation. My jaw tightened, but my hand stayed still. How long? Months, she said. It started small, a few pieces, then more. I thought it was temporary. Then I realized nothing was coming back. I stared at the wall for a second, letting it settle into place. This wasn't reckless. It was structured. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Another pause. Because he's not in love with her, Claire wrote, and she doesn't see it. I felt something shift. Not surprise. Not exactly. Just confirmation. What is he doing? I asked. He's using her, she replied. He talks about her like she's a step. A way in. He's been pushing her to hide income too. Cash jobs. Off-books payments. The room felt quieter than it should have. He wants her to look unstable before the divorce, she added, so he can control what comes next. Divorce. So he already knew, or he expected it. I typed slower now. Does she know that's what he's doing? I don't think so, Claire said. She thinks they're building something together. I closed my eyes for a second, not because it hurt, because it clarified everything. When I opened them again, the screen was still there. The messages, the pattern, affair, asset movement, hidden income, positioning. This wasn't just betrayal. It was preparation. Can you prove it? I asked. Her answer came back almost immediately. Yes. I stared at that one word. Then I leaned forward, rested my elbows on the desk, and typed the only response that mattered. Show me. Claire didn't send everything at once. She was careful. Files came in small groups over the next 2 days. Screenshots, storage logs, copies of invoices that didn't match the official records Lila kept in her system. Each piece by itself looked explainable. Together, they didn't. I sat in the den that evening with my laptop open, the glow of the screen, the only light in the room, and started lining them up side by side. Dates, item descriptions, client names. Pieces that should have been accounted for were marked in transit for weeks. Others were listed twice, once in the official books, once in a separate spreadsheet Claire had pulled from an internal drive. 2 sets of truth, one public, one hidden. I didn't rush through it. I took my time, tracing each line like I would machining flaw apart, looking for patterns, not mistakes. And the pattern was clear. Someone had been bleeding value out of that business slowly, deliberately, in a way that wouldn't trigger alarms right away. Mason. I knew it before Claire confirmed it. There's more, she wrote late that night. I leaned back in the chair. Go on. They've talked about you, she said. That didn't surprise me. How? I asked. Another pause. Then the message came in longer than the rest. They said if the divorce gets difficult, she can claim you've been controlling, intimidating, that you've been unstable since the business expanded. I read it once. Then again, calculated, not emotional, not reactive, a story prepared in advance. They think it would pressure you into settling faster, Claire added. And for more. I let out a slow breath, steady. And Mason? I asked. There was a delay this time. Longer. When she answered, it shifted everything again. He's seeing someone else, she wrote. A client. Older. Wealthy. He talks about her differently. I stared at the screen. How differently? Like she's the real opportunity. The room felt colder. Lila wasn't the end goal. She was a bridge. A way in. A way up. And she didn't even see it. I closed the laptop halfway, thinking. Then I picked up my phone and called Ron. He answered on the second ring. Tell me you found something. I did, I said, and it's bigger than we thought. There was a shift in his tone immediately. Sharper. Focused. How big? Asset movement. Hidden inventory. Possible income manipulation. And a plan to paint me as unstable if I don't cooperate. Silence for half a second. Then, do you have proof? I will, I said. I'm getting it piece by piece. Good, he replied. Because if that holds, we're not just talking about divorce anymore. I know. We bring in a forensic specialist, he continued. Financial tracing. Inventory audits. Someone who can make this stand up in court. Do it. I ended the call and sat there in the quiet. Upstairs, I could hear Lila moving again. Light steps. A drawer opening. Normal sounds. Like none of this existed. Like the version of reality she was living in was still intact. I looked back at the laptop, at the files waiting to be opened, and felt that same cold clarity settle deeper. She thought she was stepping into something better. Mason thought he was setting the board in his favor. Neither of them realized the game had already changed. And this time, I wasn't the one walking in blind. I didn't confront her right away. That would have been a mistake. Instead, I moved first. The next morning, I went to the shop before sunrise. The building was quiet, the air still carrying that mix of oil and metal that never changes no matter how many years pass. I walked the floor slowly, checking each station, each lock cabinet, each crate that held parts no one else could replicate. Prototypes, custom orders, designs that existed only in my head and in that building. By 8, I had already called in 2 people I trusted more than anyone else there. Change every password, I told them. System access, vendor accounts, everything. No exceptions. They didn't argue. Inventory audit starts today. I added. Full count. I want eyes on every part that leaves this place. One of them hesitated. Something wrong. Yes, I said, and we're fixing it before it spreads here. By noon, I had secured everything that mattered on my side. Locked down accounts. Moved sensitive files offline. Even pulled a few of the rarest prototype components into a separate, secured unit that only I could access. Control. That's what this was about now. Not reacting. Containing. When I got back home that evening, the house felt different again. Lila was in the kitchen, barefoot this time, dressed softer than usual. Light sweater. Hair down. A glass of wine in her hand. She turned when I walked in and gave me a small smile. It didn't reach her eyes. Hey, she said, like we were back to something normal. Can we talk? I set my keys down carefully. We can. She gestured toward the table. Sit. I didn't. You've been distant, she said, choosing her words. And I've been thinking, maybe we handled things badly the other morning. I watched her. This wasn't guilt. This was adjustment. I don't think we should rush into anything, she continued. We've built a life here. A lot of history. It's worth at least trying to. Lila. She stopped. I stepped closer, not aggressive, just enough that she had to focus on me fully. I know about the warehouse. The words landed clean. Her expression didn't change at first. Then it did. Subtle. Tight around the eyes. A fraction too still. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I know about the missing inventory. I continued. The off-books payments. The duplicate records. Her grip tightened slightly on the wine glass. And I know about the plan, I added. The one where I'm suddenly controlling. Intimidating. Unstable. Silence. Heavy. Real. For the first time since this started. She didn't have a response ready. You've been busy, I said calmly. Just not in the way you told me. Her voice came out lower now. Who have you been talking to? That doesn't matter. It does to me. It shouldn't, I replied. What matters is that it's documented. That word hit. Documented. I watched it sink in as she recalculated everything she thought she understood about the situation. This isn't what you think, she said finally, but the confidence was gone. You're jumping to conclusions. No, I said. I'm catching up to them. She set the glass down too hard this time. Wine sloshed against the rim. You're overreacting, she snapped. This is exactly what I was talking about. This controlling. I held up a hand. She stopped, not because I raised my voice, because I didn't. If you want to keep talking, I said evenly, we can do it with attorneys present. That landed harder than anything else. Her face went still. The softness she walked in with was gone now. The irritation, the control, replaced by something else. Uncertainty. I stepped back, giving her space again. This isn't about fixing anything, I said. That part's over. She didn't argue, didn't move, just stood there in the kitchen, finally understanding that whatever version of this she thought she could manage was already out of her hands. The meeting was set for the following Thursday. Neutral office, glass walls, long table, the kind of place designed to keep voices level and emotions contained, even when everything underneath is breaking apart. I arrived early. Ron was already there, files spread out in front of him in clean, organized stacks. Next to him sat the forensic specialist, a quiet man named Harris who had spent the last week turning Claire's fragments into something structured, something undeniable. He nodded once when I walked in. No small talk. Everything's ready, Ron said. We let them talk first. I took my seat. 10 minutes later, Lila walked in with her attorney. She looked composed, professional, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit I'd seen her wear to client negotiations. Hair pulled back, chin slightly raised. Control. Her attorney was the opposite. Loud energy, fast movements, already flipping open a folder like he was preparing for a fight. Let's get started, he said before anyone else spoke. Ron didn't move. Of course. They began exactly how I expected. Language about contributions, about lifestyle, about how Lila had supported the business indirectly, how the marriage entitled her to a significant share of everything I owned. I didn't interrupt. I watched her instead. She avoided my eyes at first. Then, slowly, she started to look more confident as her attorney laid everything out. Numbers, claims, expectations. She thought this was going her way. That was the moment Ron leaned forward slightly. Before we continue, he said calmly, we'd like to clarify a few discrepancies. He nodded to Harris. Harris slid a folder across the table. Not rushed, not dramatic, just precise. Lila's attorney frowned as he opened it, flipped one page. Then another. His expression changed. What is this? He asked. Inventory tracking discrepancies, Harris replied. Cross-reference with storage records and external lease agreements. Silence settled in. Ron spoke next. Including assets currently held in an undeclared warehouse. Lila's head snapped toward me. I didn't move. Additionally, Harris continued, sliding another set of documents forward, we've identified duplicate invoicing patterns and income streams that were not reported to the primary business accounts. Her attorney's tone dropped. This is documented, Ron said, cutting in smoothly. That word again. Documented. I watched it hit her this time. Really hit. The confidence drained first, then the control. What are you implying? Her attorney asked, slower now. I'm not implying anything, Ron said. I'm stating that if this proceeds aggressively, these findings will be introduced formally. No threats, just reality. The room went quiet. Lila finally looked at me directly. There was no irritation now, no cold superiority, just calculation and something close to fear. Her attorney closed the folder halfway, thinking. Then he leaned closer to her, voice low, a private conversation, but not quiet enough to hide the shift in tone. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was damage control. A few minutes later, he straightened up. I think, he said carefully, it would be in everyone's interest to discuss a more balanced resolution. Ron nodded once. Agreed. What followed wasn't loud. No raised voices. No dramatic arguments. Just numbers being adjusted. Positions being abandoned. Reality settling in piece by piece. In the end, the agreement came together clean. She kept the house. A reduced payout. No claim on the company. No reach into collection I'd spent years building. And most importantly, no narrative. No accusations. No version of me rewritten to suit her position. When it was done, paper sat between us. Waiting, Lila signed first. Her hand was steady, but slower than usual. I signed after. No hesitation. As we stood to leave, she looked at me one last time, like she wanted to say something. Explain. Justify. Rebuild some version of control. I didn't give her the space. I picked up my copy, turned and walked out. Not rushed, not angry, just finished. And for the first time since that night, completely untouched by anything she had left to lose. I didn't go back to the house after that, not right away. Instead, I drove straight to the shop, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside to the same quiet hum that had always been there before anything else in my life got complicated. Machines don't lie. They either work or they don't. That kind of clarity was enough. Within a month, I made the decision to move everything. The old location had history, but it also had ties I didn't need anymore. I found a larger space just outside Chattanooga, better access, more room, cleaner layout. No shared memories attached to the walls. We moved in stages. Equipment first, then materials, then the smaller details that actually make a place run right. I oversaw all of it myself. Long days, early mornings, hands back into work, instead of sitting behind a desk thinking about things that no longer mattered. The new shop came together the way all good builds do, quietly, piece by piece, until one day it was just solid, not perfect, but mine. The contract came in 3 months later, national scale, larger than anything I'd taken on before, a company that needed precision parts in consistent volume, and they didn't care about anything except reliability. That part I understood. We delivered the first run ahead of schedule, then the second. By the third, they stopped checking us closely. Trust, built the only way it ever is, through consistency. Claire joined the company not long after. We met in person for the first time in the new office. She was younger than I expected, but steady, observant, the kind of person who notices what others miss and keeps track of it. I didn't do it for anything, she said when we talked. I know, I replied. And I did. I gave her a position handling logistics and internal tracking, areas where accuracy mattered more than noise. She fit into the operation without friction. No drama. No need for attention. Just work done right. Over time, she became one of the few people I didn't have to double-check. That mattered. As for Lila, I heard things, occasionally. The studio downsized, then struggled. Some clients left quietly, others more directly. Mason disappeared from the picture not long after the settlement. No surprise there. Whatever she thought she was building didn't hold. But by then, it wasn't my concern. Years passed, not in a blur, not in some dramatic reinvention. Just steady, work expanding, systems improving, days structured the way I preferred, clear, controlled, without unnecessary complications. One evening, I stayed late at the shop after everyone else had left. The sun was dropping behind the hills, light cutting through the high windows, and settling across the floor in long, clean lines. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. I walked the length of the space slowly, past machines running exactly as they should, past shelves organized the way I designed them, past work that carried my name without needing anyone else attached to it. And I thought about that night, not with anger, not even with regret, just as a point in time where something ended and something else, better, cleaner, was forced into place. If she hadn't done what she did, I would have stayed, maintained it, ignored what was already broken because it was easier than rebuilding. Instead, everything burned out at once, and what came after was stronger than anything I had been trying to hold together. I turned off the lights, locked the door behind me, and stood there for a second in the quiet parking lot, No noise, no tension, no one waiting inside for something I no longer owed. Just space. And for the first time in a long time, nothing left to fix.